All right, shalom, shalom, family, shalom, shalom, Shabbat, shalom. Hope everyone's doing good this Shabbat day. I hope everyone's doing good this Shabbat day. And today's video, we're going to be getting into the Natufians. I'm really doing this video because it seems to be a lot of questions pertaining to the Natufians, whether it's through my social media or through the comment sections here on YouTube. A lot of people seem interested in who they are. Some people are asking if they are Israelites. Some people just want to know the full background story on these people and how they are related to so-called Semitic speaking peoples. And today I will try to present that information um, to show who they are and how they are related to, Semitic speaking peoples of the scriptures. All right. So if I sound good and everything, let me know. If I don't, let me know as well. Questions, comments, leave them within the comment section. I will try my best to answer them throughout this video. All right, so we're going to get straight to it today. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we can get to the presentation today. Later on, I'll be streaming on World Without End, the new channel we have with a few brothers, so you can catch me on there later on as well. But for now, we're about to go ahead and get into this information right here. So the Natufians, ancestors of Semites. Let's get into it. So first source right here, When the World Was Black, the Untold History of the World's First Civilizations. All right. So we're going to start at the very top where it says between. So between 1928 and 1934, archaeologists working in the Levant dug up evidence of cultures far older than the Sumerians. They found settlements dating back up to 45,000 years ago, but the most significant finds belong to the Natufian culture of approximately 13,000 to 8,500 years ago. The Natufians had a highly developed culture that made the transition from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one of the plant cultivations and animal domestication, marking the transitional point between Paleolithic and Neolithic culture in the Near East. All right, so the Natufians is one of the earliest peoples to transition from the hunter-gatherer stage into, I guess you can say, the agrarian, into agriculture, into farming and things like that. It says right here specifically that this phase was followed by the Ubad culture of 5050 through 4000 BCE, which will begin transforming into ancient Sumer around 4100 BC. So put it simply, the first civilizations in Mesopotamia ultimately trace back to the Natufians. That's very important because we know a lot of the Semitic people stretch from Mesopotamia down into the Levant or Palestine. But again, put it simply, the first civilizations in Mesopotamia ultimately trace back to the Natufians. All right, peace and blessings to everyone in the chat. And it says the Natufians ushered in the new era of civilization that would later blossom in the Near East. All right, so that's just a little background on the Natufians, but it's important to remember that the first civilizations in Mesopotamia, they will trace back to the Natufians. So Dictionary of the Old Testament, Pentateuch. We're just going to start right here specifically and get where these people were situated, or these Natufians were situated. It says the Natufian period, 10,000 to 8,300 BC, which may have been centered in coastal Syria, Palestine. It's also evidence along the Middle Euphrates region of Syria and Dixpi, Farj. I don't want to butcher all these names, but these names are going up into your Iran and Iraq regions and closer to the Euphrates. But again, the Natufians, they were centered around with the coastal Syria and Palestine all the way up to the middle of the Euphrates. And here's actually a depiction of the Natufian culture. See, it did a little nice half crescent moon, right? Stretched all the way from Jericho all the way over to Al-Kosh, which is in or near Iran, I believe, Western Iran. And they even have some sites up here near Turkey and Western Anatolia. All right, so again, the Natufians stretch from Palestine all the way up to the Euphrates, and even they have a few sites over here within Mesopotamia. So continuing, let's get a little background information on the genetics of these people and the Middle East, where they were. And to do that, we're going to go to Genomic Insights in the Origin of Farming in the Ancient Near East. Okay, we're just going to start specifically at the highlighted on this section. It says the impact of the Eastern farmers extended beyond the Near East. Farmers related to those of Anatolia spread westward into Europe. Farmers related to those of the Levant spread southward into East Africa. All right, and we know those farmers related to those of the Levant would be the Natufians, and farmers related to those from Iran spread northward into the Eurasian steppe. And people related to both early farmers of Iran and to the pastoralists of the Eurasian steppe spread eastward into South Asia. That's just the abstract. But going into it, it says right here specifically, a population without Neanderthal admixture, basal to other Eurasians, may have possibly or plausibly lived in Africa. Craniometric analysis have suggested a affinity between a Natufian and populations of North or Sub-Saharan Africa. And we're actually going to dig into that craniometric analysis a few slides later. It says a result that finds some support from Y chromosome analysis, which shows that the Natufians and successor, all right, Natufians and later Levantine Neolithic populations carried haplogroup E of likely ultimate African origin, which has not been detected in other ancient males from Eurasia. So if we go back and take a look at this map where the Natufians were centered, this was where we would see haplogroup E dominating or N during this time period, and even up into the Levant and even the early Bronze Age. Because if you watched the Japhetic invasions into the Levant, you would know that it was a lot of European invasions into the Levant that replaced that old autochthonous Natufian ancestry. But again, it even goes into it on this slide, on this side of the page right here, where it says among first farmers, those of the Levant trace 2/3 of their ancestry to people related to Natufian hunter-gatherers. All right, those were haplogroup E, and 1/3 to people related to Anatolian farmers, which would be those J markers invading the Levant during the Bronze Age. It says Western Iranian first farmers clustered with the likely Mesolithic individual and more remotely with hunter-gatherers from the Southern Caucasus, and share more lives at an equal rate with Anatolian and Levantine early farmers, highlighting the long-term isolation of Western Iran. And that goes on to say that during the subsequent millennia, the early farmer population of the Near East expanded into all directions and mixed, as we can only model populations of the Chalcolithic and subsequent Bronze Age as having shared ancestry or having ancestry from 2 or more sources, which will go back to those Anatolians and Iranians. It says the Chalcolithic people of Western Iran can be modeled as a mixture of Neolithic people of Western Iran, the Levant and Caucasus hunter-gatherers, consistent with the position of the PCA admixture from populations related to Chalcolithic people of Western Iran had a wide impact, consisting with contributing 44% of ancestry of the Levant Bronze Age populations in the south and 33% of ancestry of the Chalcolithic northwestern Anatolians in the west. So again, these peoples from Iran and the Caucasus, they contributed to 44% of the ancestry in the Levant during the Bronze Age and even 33% in the Chalcolithic. But remember, prior to that, during the Natufian period and then during the Neolithic period, it was dominated by specifically these haplogroup E's people. So again, just to show the genetics of the Natufians, we're going to go to the supplementary material of the genetic structure of the world's first farmers, because a lot of people like to say E1B1A was found and things of that sort during this period, and that's false. We see E1B1B, the earliest markers, and even E1B1. Now, what people may get confused on is seeing E1B1A right here and also E1B1B. But then again, this is just letting us know that E1B1 specifically can produce later on E1B1A or E1B1B, which is why we see E1B1B markers here as well. And even if we go to the PPNB, we see E marker, E1B1B, and then another E1B1B. And even over here, it tells you that right here that E1B1 is an upstream mutation and it is ancestral for E1B1A. So E1B1A was not found, but its ancestor was. All right. Let's see. Let's continue on. I was taking a look at the chat. But again, we're going to go to the next source right now, and we're going to talk about or look at the connection between the Natufians and sub-Saharan Africans regarding craniometrics. All right. And it says, coming from the title, the questionable contribution of the Neolithic and Bronze Age to the European craniofacial form. All right. And starting at the top right here where it says, in dendrograms such as figure 1, which is right here to the right, the Natufian sample cluster with the Mesolithic of France, the North African Epio-Paleolithic, and the European Upper Paleolithic. But the lengths of each of these twigs show that the relationships are comparably remote. Now, if you know about the samples found within Mesolithic France, you know that E1B1B was found there, EV13, as well as E1B1A. Also, if you know about the North African Epio-Paleolithic samples with the Tafara individuals, they have E1B1B. And right now I'm waiting to get confirmation from the authors of that specific Paleocene North African article, because on specific sites you will see that there was a E1B1A sample found with the Tafara and Ibero-Mauritian individuals. However, within the genetic studies, you don't find that. So I'm waiting to see if I can get confirmation on that E1B1A sample with the Ibero-Mauritians. But again, it says when the samples used in figure 1 are compared by the use of the cranial variant plots that's in figure 2, the separatedness of the Niger-Congo speakers is again quite clear. Interesting enough, however, the small Natufian sample falls between the Niger-Congo group and the other samples used. All right. It says this placement suggests that there may have been a sub-Saharan African element in the makeup of Natufians. And again, remember, if we deal with haplogroups, the Natufians did have the ancestral clade for a lot of sub-Saharan Africans. But again, this placement suggests that there may have been a sub-Saharan African element in the makeup of the Natufians. Although in the particular test, there's no such evidence present in the North African or Egyptian samples. Continuing on, it goes on to say this is particularly well documented when the 18 variables are used to generate a plot of the first two cranial variants as shown in figure 4. In this figure, one can see a clear link between the Niger-Congo sample and the Natufians. All right, the Niger-Congo samples right here and the Natufians, as well as the prehistoric recent Northeast Africa. So it's clustering in between these two. It goes on to say the prehistoric recent Northeast African sample has also subsequently linked to the Niger-Congo sample. So all three of these are linking together. So again, what they're concluding is it's that there was a sub-Saharan African makeup in the Natufians. It says if the late Paleocene Natufian sample from Israel is the source from which the Neolithic spread was derived, then there was a clear sub-Saharan African element present of almost equal importance of the late prehistoric Eurasian element. All right. So again, there was clearly a sub-Saharan African element in the makeup of the Natufians. All right. So with that, I'm going to continue on. So now that we got the understanding that these people were the first inhabitants of Levant, we got an ancestry of their paternal haplogroup, and also got an understanding that they were hunter-gatherers. One some of the first hunter-gatherers that transitioned into agriculture, into farming and agrarian societies. Now we're going to establish the fact that they were the ancestors or those ancestors of those people who spoke Semitic languages, Proto-Afro-Asiatic, whatever you would like to categorize it. But starting at the left, we're just going to read these two highlighted sections where it clearly says that the Proto-Afro-Asian speakers can be identified with high probability with the creators of the Natufian and post-Natufian early Neolithic archaeological culture of the Levant. And again, we know that the Natufians were specifically EP2 haplotypes. Again, the identification of the Proto-Afro-Asians as Natufian and post-Natufian seems to satisfy all the four criteria. All right. And again, just to get another source to go with that, origins of semosis. We're going to start at the beginning of the second paragraph where it mentions, such was the conclusion that Near Eastern cultures of the Natufian type were much older and much more developed than previously thought. Linguists not only reconstructed the lexicon of Natufians, which contained words designated some very sophisticated tools and processes, they also dated by the 12th millennium BP or before present. And they showed that Natufians spoke the Afro-Asiatic language just before this language started to disintegrate into the daughter languages, such as your Semitic, such as your Chadic, such as your Cushitic. All right. So again, these people spoke the Afro-Asiatic language before it started to break up into your different branches of the Afro-Asiatic language family, such as Semitic, such as Cushitic, Chadic, even Berber, Ge'ez, Amharic, things of that sort. Yes, sir. Niger Congo family house of Shem, indeed. It goes on to say that linguists were the first to show that Indo-Europeans inhabited some territory in the Near East, later known as Anatolia, some 8 millennia ago, and that they were strongly influenced by both Semites, the descendants of the above-mentioned Afro-Asians, which would be the Natufians. So again, the Natufians or Semites literally descend from Natufians. And it says, and by Hurry or Hurrian Caucasians. All right, and again, we spoke about this in the Japhetic invasions into the Middle East, how these people that invaded started to assimilate and take on the culture of the Semitic peoples, as this just said. It said Indo-Europeans borrowed from them many cultural words, designations of variation domesticated animals and plants, tools, religious terms, and so on. All right. So again, this is how we see a lot of people in the Near East today who, aren't actually descendants of Semitic people, but have Semitic culture, speak Semitic languages, so forth, so on. Because of this, they came in, they borrowed the Semitic culture words, designations of various domesticated animals, plants, tools, religious terms, and so on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue and get into a little bit more information regarding the Natufians. And this is coming from the New York Times, Thursday, August 4th, 1932. And it says, Bones of Cannibals, a Palestine Riddle. I'm going to read about them. Let's see, where shall we start? We're going to start at the very top and read all of it. It says 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, in what geologists call modern times a race of Negroid cannibals lived in Palestine, burned the bones of their dead after burial, and devoured the bodies of their enemies. Skulls and the thigh bones of this race were unearthed within the last 4 years, first at Shukbak near Jerusalem, and later in a cave at Mount Carmel. And because they puzzled the excavators who found them, they received the new name Natufian. Today, the first authoritative account of them was given by Sir Arthur Keith to the Congress of Prehistoric and Protohistoric Sciences, and showed them to be one of the greatest riddles of archaeology. It says they were clearly a Negroid people, says Sir Arthur. And this is the same Sir Arthur Keith that said that the Elamites were actually a Negroid people as well, and they passed that down to the Jews. All right, but again, Sir Arthur clearly, they were clearly a Negroid people, says Sir Arthur, with wide faces, flat noses, and long, large heads. They were short of stature, 5 to 3 feet or 4 inches tall, and their thighs and legs were remarkably strong. While their arms and shoulders were weak, among prehistoric peoples, they had a custom of extracting the two upper central incisors teeth of their women. Jagged holes in the fronts of their skulls indicate that they ate human brains. All right, and from his opinion, that's what he believed, they ate human brains. But I'm not going to get into all that. But this is the important part right here, where it says they may have been the ancestors of the Arabs or Semites of biblical times, in Sir Arthur's opinion. All right, and we can actually see how that would make sense based off these previous sources we just read. The Natufians spoke Afro-Asiatic languages before they degenerated into the daughter languages, and again, the Proto-Afro-Asian speakers can be identified with high probability with the creators of the Natufian and post-Natufian early Neolithic archaeological culture of the Levant. His statement actually has credence where he said they may have been ancestors of the Arabs or Semites of the biblical times. All right, so let's speed this up a little bit. Let's go down here to where it says, in addition to all these riddles, Sir Arthur propounded another linking them unaccountably to ancient of the Chaldees. All right, and that's very, very huge right there, because if the Natufians have to the Chaldees, or if the Natufians have connection to the of the Chaldees, what associated haplotypes would those be with the of the Chaldees? All right, and that's what we're going to look into later. But it says, by a strange coincidence, he said, at the time the burnt remains came to me, Leonard Woolley sent me a box of human remains from under the foundations of These burnt bones from of about the third dynasty also represented no ordinary cremation of dead bodies clothed with flesh, but cremation of dried skeletons. It says, in these remains, women bones were preponderant. And again, it says, Natufian remains, it should be remembered, are in no way connected with the more recent discoveries of a new race, a fossil of man. Also in caves near Mount Carmel, the fossil man, so remarkably different from all others yet found, became extinct in the remotely distant past, while the Natufians may still have been living when the first city-states of the Sumerians arose. All right, so we got some good information out of this source right here. Shalom, shalom, brother. We got that we have that the Natufians are indeed clearly a Negroid people, which makes sense with the source we just reviewed about the craniometrics of the Natufians being between, or being I guess you can say similar to, the Niger-Congo group. We also see that they may have been the ancestors of the Arabs or the Semites of biblical times, which we've already established, because they are the Proto-Afro-Asiatic speakers, and they did speak these languages before they degenerated. All right. And something else very important is that it's possible that they do have links to the ancient of the Chaldees. All right. The home place of Abraham. Now just keep all that in mind. So we're going to dig into the fact that Sir Arthur proposed that, again, the Arabs or the Natufians are the progenitors or the ancestors of the Arabs, because we do have information to link that suggestion. And again, we're going to go to the source. Levantines and Arabians have different origins. Middle East genomic study finds. So we're going to start at the highlighted on the left section. It says, moving on, Levantines and Iraqis share the same Neanderthal signal as Eurasians, the team found. Arabians, on the other hand, have less Neanderthal DNA. The reason apparently lies in origins. Levantines have more ancestry than Arabians from Europe and Anatolia, while the Arabians have more ancestry from Africans who did not mix with Neanderthals, and from Natufians, who are the prehistoric inhabitants of the Levant, including Israel. All right, so what Sir Arthur said is starting to make a little more sense. All right, again, the Arabians have more ancestry from Africans who did not mix with Neanderthals, and from Natufians, who were the prehistoric inhabitants of the Levant, including Israel. Also, present-day Africans are believed to have contributed, or to have a contribution from Neanderthals, after all, a very small one, conferred by early humans who trekked in reverse from Europe back to Africa after mixing with Neanderthals. Anyway, the Arabians of today apparently did not arise from early Levant farmers, but from Natufian hunter-gatherers. Okay, again, Arabians arose from Natufian hunter-gatherers who preceded these farmers and Africans, the study shows. Nor do the findings support the theory that Levantine farmers later replaced the indigenous Arabian population. All right. So again, we're just building on that foundation, showing that the Natufians can be related, or the ancestors rather, of Semitic speaking peoples. Getting a little bit more information, projecting ancient ancestry in modern day Arabians and Iranians, a key role of the past exposed Arabo-Persian Gulf on human migrations. Just read this right here on the left real quick, and it says, also the ancient Ibero-Mauritian specimens could be in part descendants of Basal Eurasians, as they have a shared genetic affinity with early Holocene Near Easterners. The best proxy are the Natufians, and 1/3 of input from sub-Saharan Africans. All right. Again, I just wanted to read that for a little context before we go over here, but it says specifically, modern Saudi Arabians and Yemeni samples cluster tightly, overlapping with the 3 Natufian samples, and were close to the Levant pre-pottery Neolithic B and C samples, all right, and the Levant Bronze Age samples. So again, we have it verified that even Yemenis are clustered tightly with Natufians. And again, it's letting us know that Saudi Arabians cluster tightly with Natufians as well. All right. Again, first we modeled the ancestry composition of the Arabian Peninsula per country from ancient source populations. The most complex scenario that was feasible for the Arabian Peninsula and the Iranian populations tested here consisted in 4 sources: Caucasus hunter-gatherer, Ibero-Mauritian, Natufian, and Zagros farmer. 2/3 of the West Arabian Peninsula populations have ancestry shared with the Natufian, typical of the Levant. All right. So again, 2/3 of the West Arabian Peninsula populations have ancestry shared with the Natufian, which is typical of the Levant, whereas the East Arabian Peninsula and Iran had a predominance of background shared with Caucasus hunter-gatherers and Zagros farmers, which is, should be expected because they're closer to that side, or closer to Iran and stuff in the Eastern Peninsula of the Arabia, in the Eastern Peninsula of Arabia. But it says the similarity with the Ibero-Mauritian was much higher in the Eastern than in the Western Arabian Peninsula, but already residual in Iran. All right. So again, the important thing to take from this is that 2/3 of the Western Arabian Peninsula population have ancestry related to the Natufians, or goes back to the Natufians. And again, that will encompass your Arabs or your Arabians. Again, it says right here that these results reflect the similarity within the Western Arabian Peninsula group with a continuity or continuum with Levant Natufian, Levant PPNB, and Levant Early Bronze Age. All right. Whereas the Eastern Arabian Peninsula Iran group displayed more Caucasian, South Asian influences. All right. So again, the Western Arabian Peninsula group, they cluster more, or they get their ancestry from the Natufians, Levant PPNB populations, and the Levant, or the early Levant Bronze Age populations, which will all consist of haplogroup E. All right, we're gonna go to another genetic study real quick. The genomic history of the Middle East, get a little bit more context on this Natufian ancestry within Arabs and Bedouins. It says, we next analyzed our samples in the context of ancient, regional, and global populations. Principal components analyzed shown that present-day Middle Easterners are positioned between ancient Levantine hunter-gatherers, Neolithic Levantines, Bronze Age Europeans, and ancient Iranians. Arabians and Bedouins are positioned closely to ancient Levantines, all right, while present-day Levantines are drawn towards Bronze Age Europeans. We found that most present-day Middle Easterners can be modeled as deriving their ancestry from 4 ancient populations: Levant Neolithic, Neolithic Iranian, Eastern hunter-gatherers, and a 4,500-year-old East African Motaman. All right, and for the Middle East to be made up of a 4,500-year-old quote unquote East African Motaman, that mean that Mota had to be in the Near East prior to migrating to East Africa. But again, the Levant Neolithic population would consist of the haplogroup E as well, and even the Mota. But again, we see that Arabians and Bedouins are positioned closely to the ancient Levantines, which would be your Natufians. In addition to differences in Eastern hunter-gatherers and African ancestries, we observe an excess of Natufian ancestry in Arabia compared with the Levant. All right. When we substitute the Levant Neolithic with Natufians as source of ancestry in the Middle East, we found that Arabians could be successfully modeled. All right. Again, when we substitute Levant Neolithic with Natufians as source of ancestry in the Middle East, we found that Arabians could be successfully modeled, whereas none of the present-day Levantines could be modeled as such, because majority of the present-day Levantines descend from those people who invaded during the Bronze Age. And it's actually going to say this over here on the right side. It says this position potentially introduced, this population potentially introduced the Y chromosome haplogroup J1 into the region. All right. The majority of the J1 haplogroup chromosome in our data set coincide around 5.6 thousand years ago, agreeing with the potential Bronze Age expansion. All right. And we know before this Bronze Age expansion, the Levant would have been dominated by haplogroup E. Again, it says, however, we did find rare divergent lineages coinciding 7,000 years ago. The haplogroups coming in the Natufians, which was E1B1B, is also frequented in our data set, with most lineages coinciding with 8.3 thousand years ago. Though we also found a rare, deeply divergent Y chromosome, which coincided 39,000 years ago, or years before present. All right. So again, we see that those J1 lineages would be introduced into the Levant with the Bronze Age expansion. Again, it says we next tested whether we can model our populations as they derive an ancestry from one of the sampled regional Bronze Age populations, and found that the Middle Bronze Age population from Sidon B, right, which we reviewed that in the Japhetic invasions into the Near East. All right. But again, the populations and from found that the Middle Bronze Age population from Sidon BA could be a source of ancestry from some modern Levant and Arabian populations. Our phylogenetic modeling suggests that modern Levantines could have directly derived their ancestry from a Sidon BA related population. And that's dealing with the Philistine burials. And again, it says, however, Arabians require additional ancestry from the Natufian related populations. All right. So again, the Arabians would descend from Natufian related populations. Continuing on, what should we start specifically on this one? Let's just start at the highlighted. But it says, proposed that a basal Eurasian population with little to none Neanderthal ancestry had contributed different proportions to ancient and modern Eurasian, reaching 50% in the Neolithic Iranians and Natufians. All right. That's just dealing with the ancestry of the Natufians, how they had quote unquote 50% basal Eurasian ancestry. And it says, since Arabians have an excess of Natufian-like ancestry compared to elsewhere in the Middle East, we found that they also carry an excess of basal Eurasian ancestry that will reduce their Neanderthal ancestry. All right, so we see that even Arabians have basal Eurasian ancestry that came by way of their Natufian ancestry. It says, by modeling contemporary populations using ancient genomes, we identify differences between the Levant and Arabia. The Levant today has higher European/Anatolian related ancestries, while Arabia has higher African and Natufian-like ancestries. All right. And even when they're dealing with that African, or when they say an African, they're specifically talking about EM2, because EM2 actually has an ancient presence in Arabia. But that's for another video. It says the contrast between the regions is also illustrated by the population size histories that diverged before the Neolithics and suggest the transition to the sedimentary agricultural lifestyle allowed the growth of populations in the Levant, but was not paralleled in Arabia. It has been suggested that population discontinuity occurred between the late Paleocene and early Holocene in Arabia, and that the peninsula was was repopulated by Neolithic farmers from the Fertile Crescent. Our results do not support a complete replacement of Arabian populations by Levantine farmers. Why? Because they migrated down. It says, in addition, our model suggests that Arabians could have derived their ancestry from the Natufian-like local hunter-gatherer populations instead of Levantine farmers. All right, so I think I beat it over the head pretty much with showing that Arabians and even Bedouins would actually get their ancestry from quote unquote Natufians. All right. So we can see that Arabs' ancestry ultimately goes back to Natufians. We've reviewed this. All right. And they even have genetic connections as well, because you do have Arabs with E1B1B, and you do have Arabs with EP2, E1B1. So why specifically is this important? All right. Why is it important that we know that Arabs' ancestry goes back to Natufians? Well, because we know that a lot of the Arabs are descendants of Shem and descendants of Abraham and even descendants of Joktan. And we're going to read right here from the genetic structure of the Kauai and Falaka Island populations, raw chromosome and mitochondrial DNA variation. So this is right here. This right here specifically is why it is important that we know the ancestry of these Arabians. And it says the chronology of the history of the Arabian Peninsula is highly complex. The Arabian people are known to be descended of two branches. All right, we just read that that ancestry ultimately goes back to Natufians. But again, the Arabian people are known to be descendants of two branches, the southern region and the northern central regions. It says the northern and central tribes were descendants of one ancestor who was Adnan, descendant of Ishmael, sons of Abraham, and were known as the Arabicized Arabs. All right, so we see that the northern and central tribes, or the northern and central Arabs specifically, are known to be descendants of Ishmael, son of Abraham. All right. Again, it says the southern Arabs were supposed to be descendants of Qatan, who was identified with the biblical Joktan or Joktan, direct descendant of Shem, son of Noah. They were known as the real Arabs. All right. And that's more than likely because they were there before the descendants of Ishmael. All right. Yeah, so the Joktanites are more than likely, or in my opinion, I'd rather say are one of the first quote unquote branches of Arabs, which is why they're always known as or called real Arabs. But again, the important thing to know here is that you have the northern Arabs and central Arabs who descend from Ishmael, and you have the quote unquote southern Arabs who descend from Joktan. And we just brought out the information that the Natufians are the ancestors of the Arabs. We know the Natufians are EP2 haplotypes, specifically E1B1 and E1B1B. The question is, could this be why we see E1B1B amongst these specific tribes today, specific Arabs today? But let's continue. It also gets more interesting once we go to this source right here, or this article rather, Resurrecting the Ancient Israelites from the Valley of the Dry Bones. This specific article was written by Aaron Elhak, and he is an Israeli geneticist, place of birth Israel, nationality Israeli, and his affiliation is from Loud University. So this is all his credentials, and I wanted to bring this out because he basically says something that I agree with wholeheartedly, and it makes sense with everything we just brought out. But it says, yet these average mask and the high heterogeneity among all Jewish communities, some people may share the highest similarity with Gal, a young Neolithic woman, only 6,200 years old. And other people may find that they are close to Abraham, a Turkish man, E1B1, who led a group of Anatolians to what he must have felt was the promised land. All right. Of course, I disagree with Abraham being Turkish and Anatolian, but what I do agree with is the fact that more than likely he was E1B1. All right, which is why we see it in a lot of the Arabians today. All right. But again, this is very, very important because we're linking Abraham up with a quote unquote Natufian haplotype, and we're also linking up the Arabs up with Natufian haplotypes. Now, if I was just to go back 1 second and try to explain this a bit more, we know that Ishmael is a descendant of Abraham, and we know that Natufians are that, or we know that Arabians have a lot of Natufian ancestry or descend from Natufians, which is E1B1B and E1B1. It's highly probable that Ishmael and his descendants received haplotype EP2 from Abraham and their Natufian ancestors. Same with Joktan, because Joktan is actually before, and the Joktanites is actually before Abraham and the Ishmaelites, and we can see that they also are affiliated with the EP2 haplotypes as well. All right, so again, we specifically dealing with the Natufians. I'm going to dig a little more into the Arabs and what tribes they descend from according to their traditions and culture. All right, but we just saw a genetic connection between the Arabs and the Natufians, and we know that the Arabs again are descendants of Ishmael as well as Joktan. All right, and even right here in this article, this Israeli geneticist is proposing that Abraham is E1B1. All right, and it just gets more interesting as we go. So the origins of the Ashkenazic Jews and Yiddish. All right, we're about to read this right quick for a little confirmation to what we brought out earlier in the presentation, because again, we're building off the fact that Sir Arthur stated that the Natufians are the ancestors of the Arabs of biblical time and also the Semites. So again, we're going to start at the very top. It says that the non-Levantine origin of AJs or Ashkenazi Jews is further supported by an ancient DNA analysis of 6 Natufians in the Levantine Neolithic. Some of the most likely Judean progenitors. All right, so we see that the Natufians not only are the ancestors of the Arabs and the Semites, but it's also possible that the Natufians are the ancestors or the progenitors of the Jews. All right. And if that's the case, we would expect to see modern day Jews with EP2 haplotypes. All right. The same thing we see with the Arabs. They have EP2 haplotypes as well. But again, let's read this again. The non-Levantine origin of Ashkenazi Jews, and that's not all of them, but some, is further supported by an ancient DNA analysis of 6 Natufians and a Levant Neolithic. And we know the DNA of those times. And it says some of the most likely Judean progenitors. In a principal component analysis, the ancient Levantines clustered predominantly with modern-day Palestinians and Bedouins and marginally overlapped with Arabian Jews. All right. Let's see if we're going to continue to bring out something from this source. Yeah, let's continue to read. It says Ashkenazi Jews clustered away from Levantine individuals and adjacent to Neolithic Anatolians and late Neolithic and Bronze Age Europeans. All right, so again, we keep saying that The Natufians are the ancestors of these Arabs, these Semitic peoples, and majority of the Jews and modern day Palestinians and Levantines today would actually descend from these Bronze Age Anatolians that invaded the Levant, which is very, very important. And it goes on to say right here, repeating the analysis, we found that the Ashkenazi Jews admixture could be a model or could be modeled using either three Neolithic Anatolians, Neolithic Iranians, and Eastern hunter-gatherers, or two-way Neolithic Iranians and Eastern hunter-gatherers in migration ways. So this is ultimately who the Ashkenazi Jews would go back to, these these Neolithic Anatolians, Iranians, and Eastern hunter-gatherers, which invaded during the Bronze Age. But overall, the combined results are in a strong agreement with the predictions of the Irano-Turkic Slavic hypothesis and rule out any ancient Levantine origins for Ashkenazi Jews, which is predominant among modern-day Levantine populations. This is not surprising since Jews differentiated in cultural practices and norms intended to adopt local customs. Very little Palestinian Jewish culture has survived outside of Palestine. But again, the important thing from this is that the Natufians are more than likely the progenitors of the Judeans. Again, if that's the case, we would expect to see modern day Jews with EP2 haplotypes. All right. And to feed off that, we can see that coming from the same source from the brother Aaron Elhart, the Israeli geneticist, he proposes or postulates that the Y chromosome haplotype of ancient Israelites are typically E1B1, which is what we saw in the Natufians. All right. And even haplogroup T1, but that came fairly late and it's not Semitic in origin. But again, interestingly enough, the Y chromosomal haplotypes of the ancient Israelites are typically E1B1. Now that can break down into E1B1A or E1B1B. But again, family, this man is an Israeli geneticist, so he does know something, a little something different than we do, or he knows something that we don't. All right. So again, the Natufians are most likely the progenitors of the Judeans. We know the Natufians had EP2 haplotypes, and we see a geneticist postulating that the Israelites had EP2 as well, E1B1, E1B1 specifically as well. All right. So we reviewed a lot, but with that, that's all I have right now at the end of this presentation. But to give a quick summary, we reviewed the origins of the Natufians, where they live. Matter of fact, let me just go back and review this real quick before I come back to the comments. 1 second. Just show my entire screen and do it. But again, go back up to the beginning. We showed that the Natufians were responsible for the first civilizations within Mesopotamia. All right. We showed that they were centered from Palestine all the way up to the Euphrates River, and that they even had settlements and archaeological findings of the Natufians all the way from Palestine to Iran, over here in Ali Kosh, right? Or Ali Kosh. We see that haplogroup E was the dominant haplogroup of the Natufians, and even in successor Levantine Neolithic populations. We saw that 2/3 of the people in the Middle East derived their ancestry from the Natufians. All right. We also saw that they had a cranial analysis or craniometric similarities with sub-Saharan Africans. Again, this is specifically the genetic findings of the Natufians. No, they did not find E1B1A. We have to stop saying that and stop twisting the information. Basically, we have to stop twisting the information. But again, here are the craniometric analysis between quote unquote Niger Congo people, sub-Saharan Africans, and the Natufians. their findings proposed, or with their findings, they had the conclusion that there was indeed a sub-Saharan African element in the Natufians. We we reviewed that they were the Proto-Afro-Asiatic speakers, that they spoke Afro-Asiatic languages before it broke off into your Semitic, your Hebrew, your Cushitic, your Chadic, your Berber, your Tuareg. All right. We also reviewed the New York Times post or news article about them with Sir Arthur Keefe, him saying that they were clearly a Negroid people. They had connections with Ur of the Chaldees, and that they were the ancestors of the Arabs and the biblical Semites. All right. We show how genetically Arabians actually do trace their ancestry back to Natufians. Again, we did the same thing with this, Saudi Arabians and even Yemenis. All right. Again, showing the genetic connection between Arabians, Bedouins, and Natufians. Came to the conclusion that Arabs' ancestry ultimately goes back to Natufians. We showed that specifically Arabs descend from sons of Abraham, Ishmael, son of Abraham, and even Joktan. And it's very interesting because both of those groups have EP2 haplotypes. You can find E1B1B in a lot of these Arabian tribes, and small amounts of E1B1A here and there, and even small amounts of EP2. All right. And so it's possible that what I'm about to say, it's possible that Abraham passed E1B1 down to the descendants of Ishmael and even the Israelites. All right. Again, we showed that the Ashkenazi Jews, or we showed that specifically the Natufians were the more than likely the progenitors of the Jews. So we would see modern day Jews with EP2 haplotypes, E1B1, E1B1A, E1B1B. And then we showed that a Israeli geneticist came up with kind of the same conclusion, showing that the Y chromosome haplotypes of ancient Israelites are typically E1B1, which is a Natufian haplotype, which if you diverge, or if the mutations are right, you will go into E1B1A and E1B1B. And that is the final and conclusion of everything we have today. So now I'm going to review the comment section real quick. Stop sharing my screen. I'm going to go back up and try to catch up with everything that's been brought out. Peace and blessings, family. Peace and blessings. Again, if anybody has any questions, comments, go ahead and drop them in the comment section real quick so I can catch up to them. And again, I will be live later on with the brothers from World Without End. So you can catch me on there as well. Shalom, brother, Dorf L. He says the term Levant is loaded. There was used more anciently to mean Niger Gulf region. Interesting. Yes. Shout out to my Niger Congo family, my Bantu family, my West African family. House of Shem, indeed. Ibero is Iberian Peninsula, and Mauritian is Mauritanian region. I don't disagree with that. And I can definitely see how that definitely came to be. Because again, the history regarding the Ibero-Mauritans kind of supports that. Shalom, brother. Shalom, brother. Shalom to the Danite, brother. Shalom, sister. Shalom, sister. Shabbat shalom to everyone. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom to everyone. Shabbat shalom. And Shabbat shalom again. The brother asked, do you think it's possible for the Natufians to be a corruption of the Natufians? If I'm being honest, at the moment, I'm not sure who you're referring to. Let me try to do a quick Google search to Yeah, brother, I'm not too familiar with those people. Maybe you can clarify me a little bit or give a little clarity. Says my Jedmet Amish say I'm 10% Western Semitic, not to mention I have Mota, Natufian, Basal, Eurasian, and Iberian in my DNA. My point is, fam, we all have E1B1A. They know who we are. And that right there is big because I'm pretty sure that's showing your ancient ag mixture. So again, showing that you have Western Semitic DNA or ag mixture is very, very big. Showing that you have Natufian ancestry is very, very big. Showing that you have Basal Eurasian ancestry is very, very big as well, because we know all of these people were centered, quote unquote, outside of Africa, in the Levant, in the Near East, and they even had haplogroup E. So again, we do have that connection genetically, autosomally, whatever you want to say. We do have that connection, specifically those with E1B1A or E1B1B or EP2 haplotypes. What haplogroup do you think Jesus would have? If Jesus was a real man and he walked this earth, he would have to have E1B1A or E1B1B. If he was a direct descendant from Jacob, if he was a legit Israelite, he would have to be E1B1B or E1B1A, in my opinion. In my opinion. If anybody else has any other opinions, then feel free to drop it. But in my opinion, if Jesus was a real man, then he would be EP2 haplotypes. The brother says E1A is PPNB, but not in Israel in the Natufian period. How does that make sense if E1A is older than E1B1? All right, so brother, it's possible that, because like I always say, these mutations can happen quicker than we think and further back than we think. So it could have been that you had people with EP2 already settled in the Levant prior to the PPNB period, and you had a person with E1A that migrated down into the Levant during that PPNB period, while they were already EP2 Natufians there, if that makes sense. In other words, you can have a population of people. You can have, let's just say you can have a population of people where you see newer haplogroups and older haplogroups within it. The sister says, was it true Esau mixed with Ishmael family members? Yes, it is true. It is true. Esau did mix with Ishmael. We see a few scripture references of that. And might have a few historical references of that as well, but it is true. Even if you go to the Blue Letter Bible, Strong's Concordance, it'll tell you that both Esau as well as Ishmael are the fathers of the Arabian nations. So yeah, that's true. Shalom, brother. Shalom, brother. Let's see. Right. So yes, that's dealing with your ancient admixture. Yes, that's facts. That's facts. So a lot of times we don't see when we do 23andMe today and DNA tests, we won't really see Western Semitic. We won't really see Ibero-Marusian, Basal Eurasian, Natufian, just because it's so far back in time. And a lot of these companies don't even test for that. That's why you have to upload your raw DNA into GEDmatch specifically to find this information. Said I should have said Yeshua. I've just gotten used to that name all my life. Yeah, I know what you mean, brother. I know what you mean, brother. But yes, even if we're dealing with Yeshua, if he existed, he would have, in my opinion, E1B1A or E1B1B. That's who I believe the Semites are. You know what I'm saying? Or the Jews are. Yes, yes, yes. It is kind of isolated. It's we do see it in Africa. I don't really find, or I really haven't found any ancient or any older information regarding these people. Like I can't find a I guess you can say I cannot find, or I haven't found a full population of people with like 60% E1A, 70% E1A, you know what I'm saying, 100% E1A. So this haplogroup is a little harder, but what it looks like is mutations happen fast. The brother said he has Western Semitic for him at 14% and also Natufian. All right. So again, we see a lot of people with these E markers having this ancient, you know what I'm saying, Western Semitic, even Natufian connection. And yes, the Dogon do have E1A. The Dogon do have E1A. I think they like 50% E1A and 50% E1B1B. I mean, E1B1A, not E1B1B, but 50% E1A and 50% E1 B1A. So yes. But again, family, if anyone has any more questions or comments, please drop them. Please drop them. And I'll try my best to answer them. I'm about to pull up something real quick. Show you all. All right, I'm about to share my screen real quick because I do want you all, if you rock with me and you rock with my channel, you rock with the information I bring out, would like for you all to add this channel right here where we'll be getting into a lot of information. This is the video we did last weekend, the dispersion of Israel, dealing with scriptural content regarding migrations of the northern tribes into Assyria, doing those Assyrian exiles and things like that. I'm trying to see how I can find the link to share. I'm just drop the link to this video. But yes, family, if you would like to follow me on this channel and support me there, please feel free to. I will drop the link in the chat, and I will be on later on regarding some information. Let's see. It's about 50 to 60% of African Americans, specifically with E1B1A, specifically 50 to 60% of Afro Americans with E1B1A. Brother says based on DNA, if you present percentages of Scotland, Irish, Portugal, and Ashkenazi Jew, you can combine them for overall Yehudim DNA percentage. Interesting. Yeah, I don't really know what you mean fully, but I kind of grasp it. Brother says, I watched a video of a man in Africa saying Luos have Jewish ancestry. That was interesting. Yes, I believe the Luos are Bantu. So yes, more than likely possible. A lot of Bantus do have Israelite ancestry. Your Luya, your Kikuyu, your Mizri people. There's a lot of them. Your Balubas, your Shona, Limba, of course. So yeah, a lot of Bantus have Israelite or traditions. Even the Bantus or the Bamileke of Cameroon, they're one of the, I guess you could say, purest Bantus or sub-Saharan African groups. They're like 100% E1B1A. Yes. Historically, Jews have inherited or inhabited places like Scotland, Ireland, Portugal, and we would be able to see a DNA reflection of that if we was to look for DNA within those locations. We would look for haplogroup E, if anything, or we would be looking for the Y chromosome of these people. All right. So yes, that is fact. Historically, Jews have been in Scotland, Europe period. Brother says, oh, that's a question from Dor or for Dorville. But yeah, I do know about the Jacobites. I actually have some very interesting information on, Jacobites and them being expelled out of Scotland and some of them making their way into America. So that's interesting as well. I think you may be talking about autosomal or something. I don't believe you're talking about direct paternal ancestry. And no, would Afro Polynesians be Israelites? I would say no, and I wouldn't even call them Afro. People call people Afro just because they have Negroid looks, they're dark skinned, they have woolly hair. But no, genetically they're not related to a Bantu. They're not related to a West African. They're not related to a Berber, Arab. They're not even related to the Andaman Islands peoples, people with D over there. So, nah, I would say they Japhet just based off their haplogroup. You know what I'm saying? And again, if we want to get tripped up off of phenotype and color, we really can't, because the original Europeans, the original Japhites themselves were dark-skinned peoples. So most high willing, in the near future, I will. All I have to do is, get enough information for a presentation. Then I don't see why I wouldn't be able to do one. But yeah, I do have information on them. But I'd like to have a significant amount to put a presentation together. So y'all willing, I will be able to do that, brother. But yeah, you did have Jacobites get sent on ships across the ocean once they got put out of Scotland. Facts. You can find haplogroup E in some of those European territories. You can find haplogroup E in some of those white Europeans over there as well. That could be contributed or attributed to Moors, could be attributed to Jews. Some of it can be even attributed to Edomites, which is for a later study. All right. But again, let's see what else I have for you all. I don't see any more questions. If you have any more questions, please drop them for me real quick. But I know, again, like I said, later on today, I will be live with the brothers. Please follow that page if you'd like to see me on there. I love the support over there as well. And of course, tomorrow, more than likely, I will be on the brothers' Lion Form channel for Synthetic Sunday, dealing with some more DNA evidence. All right. So, yeah, let's see. The sister says, I didn't know Israelites were sent, or let's see, I didn't know Israelites. Oh, yes. So, yes, Israelites were sent from Europe. Whether if you're dealing with Jacobites, I don't really know if the Jacobites were Israelites or not. I just know that they were, noble black people. It's possible they were Israelites. I just have to make the connection first. More than likely, they were Moors or Israelites. So, but you did have Sephardic Jews being sent out of Europe as well, from Spain, Portugal, Amsterdam, things like that. So yeah, it's a long history of Israelites coming out of Europe on ships or whatever they're doing, from being expelled and things like that. Yes, yes, yes. That should be expected. That should be expected. Nelson Mandela being E1B1A. That should be expected. Yesterday I was trying out some new um gadgets and gadgets I have, testing out this new mic and equipment I have, just trying to make sure everything sounded good. So I was just on for like 5 minutes, just trying to hear myself, make sure everybody else heard me. The brother says that's interesting. Are the original dark-skinned Europeans descendants still around today? I don't know if they're still. Well, yes, the Polynesians. Well, they won't necessarily be Europeans, but they would be descendants of Japheth. So you do have black people with European haplogroups. So yeah, they would be descendants of those Europeans. But as far as the original stock of dark-skinned Europeans being around, I don't believe so. I believe specifically they developed light skin pigmentation genes, and they just continue to mutate, and they are what we see today. They are what we see today. But people like Polynesians, Melanesians, Dravidians, these are even some of the East Indians. All of these people are, and even the people in Oceania, Native American Indians. All these people are dark-skinned peoples. You know what I'm saying? But they would be related to Japhet. Not all of Japhet's seed turned white, and not all of Japhet's seed were Europeans. If that makes sense. I really advise you all to go look at the Brother Hebrew of Israel page to get into some of those breakdowns on Japhet. But yes, some of them were sent from or sent to the West Indies. Depends on who you're talking about. But I do believe some of the Jacobites were sent to the West Indies, but I do know a lot of Sephardics were sent to the West Indies as well. So either way, you're true. I mean, either way, you're right. Yes, yes, yes. That is a large portion, or a large reason to why we do have English names. You know what I'm saying? That's facts. That's facts. That's something to look into. That is something to look into, because I have heard about the tribe of Dan going over into Europe at early times, this and that. So again, that seems very interesting. I just have to make connections on who the Jacobites actually, you know what I'm saying, came from, who they were. I haven't found anything on that really. But y'all willing, I will. Y'all willing, I will. Most High willing. No, 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 no. The brother says, is it true the tribe of Naphtali is Hawaiians? I would disagree on that. It's not true. Um, those in Hawaii that descend from ancestors with haplogroup E, they have a possibility of being Israelites and claim to be Naphtali, but the majority of Hawaiians would be Japhites, in my opinion. If anybody has any other source material to go against that, please feel free to drop it. But again, Hawaiians would not be Israelites or Hamites. Brother does that. Eldor Vale says you will have a small group that they kept around to make sport of. Yes, that's possible. If you guys ever heard, I hope I don't butcher this name or say it wrong, but the Abkhazian Negroes. The Abkhazian Negroes. If we was to get genetics or DNA studies done on them, it's possible that all those people can be descendants of Japhet. You know what I'm saying? And they look like sub-Saharan African Negroes. The thing is, Josephus said that there was a Negro people living in Europe um, during his times as well, and we still see those people there today. The only thing is we don't have the genetics on those people, so we don't know if they E-markers or what they are. But just because a person looks Negroid doesn't automatically mean that they are Ham or Shem. All right. Let me see. Says, can you do a study on Keturah, descendants, or their haplogroups? All right. Yes, yes, yes. I can try. I can try. If I can find specifically descendants of Keturah or tribes that claim descent from Keturah and Abraham, then yeah. I do believe that they would be on their Y-DNA haplogroup side, E1B1 B specifically, maybe one of the E1B1B clans, because again, you can have E1B1B and not be descended from the same father. Or I guess what I'm trying to say, E1B1B can have multiple lineages, if that makes sense. All right. Brother says you have a lot of archaeology that Nigerians went and migrated in Ireland. Yeah, you're gonna have to send me some of that. I don't know what specific Nigerians you're talking about and when this happened, but yeah. The brother says Ireland and Nigerian language are related. Yeah, brother, you're gonna have to send me some information on that. Show how these languages are related. Says, no, it's off topic, but what do you make of Ramses being E1A? It's not really off topic, but I've been trying to research if that's true. It is true. Let me bring up a study real quick. See if I have one. If not, we ain't gonna worry about it. But even 23andMe will tell you that Ramses III was E1B1A. Yep, I do have a study. Let me share my screen just to show you that confirmation. Then I answer your question to what do I think of it. So, source right here. Ancient Egyptian mummy genome suggests an increase in sub-Saharan African ancestry in post-Roman periods. Let's see. Give me a second to find it. Haven't looked in here in a while. I'm probably going right over it. Let me just do search. All right, so yeah, here we go. It says right here specifically, what should I read from? I'm gonna just read from the top. The authors completely dismissed the results of the PCR methods used on the AE remains. It says the results are likely reliable, are from studies that analyze short tandem repeats from Amara or from the Amarna royal mummies. Ramses III had the Y chromosome haplogroup E1B1A. All right. So yes, it is true that um Ramses was E1B1A. And what do I think of it? I think that he was indeed a Semitic person. I do not believe, or I don't know if he was an Israelite. But if you was to go to 23andMe and if you have E1B1A, it would tell you that you share a um paternal ancestry with Ramses III, and it tells you that he was born or he was from Western Asia or Northeastern Africa. And if I have time in a second, I will pull up the Harris Papyri where it's mentioning his father and everything, because it actually says that his father is a Syrian. All right. So it says his father is a Syrian. So if his father is Assyrian, that means he got E1B1A for his father, and that means it's possible that the Assyrians had E1B1A as well. Not that I know of, it's possible. Not that I know of, it's possible. I'm not saying you incorrect or anything. I'm just saying I don't know. I don't know. I'm not aware. Brother says, can you do an ancestry or can you do a video on the ancestry of the Chaldeans? I can try. And when you say ancestry, what do you mean by ancestry? Like a genetic breakdown? Because that can be really hard. If not, I can bring out a little history on them, and from a historical standpoint of their ancestry. So, and yes, like the brother says on 23andMe, it says I share a bloodline with Ramses the third, and even if you continue to read down, it tells you that he was from Western Eurasia or Northeast Africa. All right, we know Western Eurasia is the so-called Near East, and we know West East Africa is, Egypt, the Negev, Israel. So if anybody has any more questions, continue to drop them real quick while I look for this Harris Papyri, where it mentions his fathers. And yes, Josephus stated Negro type people were in Europe. Didn't know that. Now it makes sense. Yes, it does make sense. It does make sense. And the brother says all Syrian means is a descendant of Aram. And even if that's so, it still will mean that it's possible that the Aramites or the people of Aram possessed E1B1A as well. And which we should expect. We would expect Semitic peoples to, carry EP2 haplotypes. You know what I'm saying? So let me see if I can find this real quick. If not, we're gonna wrap it up here in a second because I have to get ready and do some other things. See if I can find this. Right. So yes, Aram is a descendant of Shem. So yes. Brother said it's stupid when people say Middle East. That is a direction. Yes, it is kind of funny. It is kind of funny. All right. Sorry, family. I'm trying to see if I can find this papyri where it mentions that Ramses III's father was Assyrian. If I can't find it, we're not gonna worry about it. But give me one more second. Let me see if I can try to find it one more time. If not, so yes, I found it. Let's see. Share my screen real quick. And brother, what you mean show book comments for others? Was that for me or someone else? But if you just go to Ramses III, just Google Ramses III, go to the Wikipedia page, go to his father, which is Seknot, and his father is not Ramses II. I know a lot of people probably think that, but no, his father is not Ramses II. Two different time periods. But if we go down here to Sheknot, his paternal father, who would have been E1B1A as well, we go to the Harris Papyri or the Papyri Harris. It says right here, the land of Egypt was overthrown from without, and every man was strong out of his right. they had no chief mount for many years, formerly until other times. The land of Egypt was in the hands of the chiefs and rulers of towns, and slew his neighbors, great and small, other times having come over it with empty years. Erush, a self-made man, a certain Syrian, all right, a certain Syrian or Karu was with them as chief of war. Or excuse me, with them as chief. He said, plundering their possessions, they made goods like men, and no offerings were presented in the temples. All right, and let me just read this beginning part. It says the beginning of the great Harris Papyrus, or Papyrus Harris the First, which documents the reign of Ramses the Third, provides some details about Shekinah's rise to power. All right, and within this, Shekinah is mentioned as Assyrian or Karu. All right, so we know he was an Asiatic. We know he was an Asiatic for sure. Don't know if he was an Israelite or Assyrian, what, but we know that he was indeed Semitic. Let's see. The term Middle East was a racist political term. Brother says, look at LOL, look it up. I will. You know I will, brother. My closest modern population is Limba. Would they share the same Y haplogroup as of Ramesses too? Still learning this stuff. So yes, a few of the Limba would share Y DNA haplogroups or DNA haplogroup with Ramses the Third. And actually, I might pull up something for you. And even me myself, I share closest whatever it's called. Or excuse me, I share close modern population density with the Limba as well. But I'll show you a chart of their haplogroups real quick, just so you can have a little understanding. But yes, some of them will, but not all of them, if that makes sense. All right, so this right here specifically is from Limba Origins Revisited, tracing the ancestry of Y chromosomes in South African and Zimbabwe Limba. You go down right here, you'll see the haplogroups that the Limba have. They really have a hodgepodge or a lot. But specifically, what we're looking for is the Ramses the Third one, and yes, they do have a good chunk of it. EM2 is in the Limba clan, the Rimba clan, and also the Venda clan. And again, V38 or EV38 is right before EM2, so they still would be related. Y'all willing, we will be someday. Someday we will be. Y'all willing, we will be someday. And brother Dorf L, I'm honestly confused. May you clarify that? What you mean? Show the book comment above. Which comment is that? All right. And if you all have any more questions, please go ahead and drop them, of course. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up here in a second. All right, all right. So I see no more questions, comments, or anything. Um, let's see. Some just popped up. The sister says, "Do you know the Daula people from Cameroon and their haplogroup?" Yes, yes, yes. They are related to other Bantu peoples. Yes, they do have E1B1A or EM2. And yes, I do know of them. I do know of them. I have a sister on Instagram who's actually from these tribes, and she lets me know a lot about their customs and everything, and how they're actually are related to a lot of Nigerian and Ghanaian customs. So yes, I do know of the Daula people. They are a Bantu group and they do have E1B1A. All right, brother Dorvell. I'm trying to see which comment that is. So give me a second, see what you're talking about. Are you talking about this comment, brother? All right. Are you talking about that specific comment? I'm gonna get to your comment right once I get done with this, brother Dorvell. Well, the brother says, according to the prophecy given to Abraham in Genesis 15:13, we will be back in the land 4 generations from now. Um, that's your interpretation of that scripture. Obviously. Um, that's barely people. I'm not even gonna say nothing on that. But again, he goes on to say, "Oh, I thought these two comments were from the same person." But let me go back. So I'm gonna answer your question. According to the prophecy given to Abraham in Genesis 15:13, we will be back in the land 4 generations from now. And again, that's just your interpretation on that. I don't believe that's saying that. I believe we'll be in the land whenever the Most High decides to bring us back to the land. You know, the brother says on African ancestry, how come people with different haplogroups match Israelite tribes? It could be through admixture or autosomal DNA. All right, because say someone has a male has haplogroup J, but he has a cousin or something with haplogroup E. Guess that can answer how it can show up that they're related. If that's answer your question, but the only way this can show up, or the only way it can match, is through autosomal or admixture. You can't match with someone, or you can't match a haplogroup with a different haplogroup. All right, so someone with an E haplogroup cannot be related to someone with a J haplogroup. Someone with a K haplogroup cannot be related to someone with a haplogroup. All right, if that makes sense. The brother says, didn't that prophecy already happen in Egypt with Moses? Some people believe so. Some people believe so. Um, hmm, I don't really want to touch on this. I really want to touch on these topics regarding um, Bible prophecy and things like that, because again, it's all hearsay of the person and hearsay of the person's interpretation. Um, we can look at that verse as after 400 years, the Negroes in America supposedly waking up to their identity. Because again, if you want to be 100, slavery did not start at 1619 within America. We don't have to twist the scripture. We don't have to twist prophecies to fit our narrative, because regardless, we do have the genetic ties to the Israelites. You get what I'm saying? So there's no need to try to twist prophecy to try to make every prophecy about today, about what I'm saying, about today's time. Because again, it's just your interpretation of that scripture. The brother says we could be in the land this year. The 400 years is up, and again, yes, it is possible that something can happen, that a national gathering could happen. You know what I'm saying? From the four quarters of the earth, us leaving America, us leaving Canada, us leaving Jamaica, us leaving Brazil, us leaving South America, us leaving Europe. It's very, very possible. You know what I'm saying? But again, I'm not going to say that it's for certain, because I really don't like to twist prophecy to try to prove that we the Israelites, because we don't have to do that. So again, some people believe it happened in Egypt. Some people believe it's somehow dealing with 3,000 years later. All right. Yeah, it just depends on how you feel about it, your interpretation, really. The brother said, what is your view on the 2/3 doctrine of our people won't be in the kingdom? I did a video on that a while back because I got tired of a lot of camp brothers saying that. I got tired of seeing that doctrine online. The 2/3 event, the 2/3 prophecy was already fulfilled within Jeremiah. All you have to do is read that's all you have to do is read the book. And it would tell you that the 2/3 already happened. 2/3 were 2/3 are not going to die in end times or be cut off in end times or whatever the camp brothers like to say. There's really not even a mention of 2/3 or a 2/3 event in the book of Revelations. So in my opinion, the 2/3 already happened, and it's not applying to our people today. And we would be descendants of those 2/3. We would be descendants of that 1/3 that fled into Africa or that survived. I don't believe in the whole 2/3 of us going to die in the end time prophecy. That's really just camp interpretation and camp doctrine. I'm going to share my screen real quick because I did a video on it. I'm going to show you where it's at. Then I'm going to drop the link to it. So here it is, Shabbat breakdown, the 2/3. Did a whole breakdown on it, which through scripture, and laid the foundation to why I believe or why I see that the 2/3 event had already happened. All right. And it's not dealing with today from my biblical studies. So there you are, brother. You can watch that if you would like and review the scripture with me that I went over. Brother says no, because Egypt wasn't a strange land to Abraham's descendants. Yeah, and I can even make the argument that the pharaohs that were ruling in Egypt when Joseph went in were Semitic. I could argue that the pharaohs that were ruling when Joseph went in were actually those Hyksos foreign ruler Asiatics. All right, which would explain why he was so easily accepted by the pharaoh. Just got to look at the history around that time. The brother said, Eden on the Niger by Catherine Achulio. I don't want to butcher the name. Can get free copy on Kindle and or Google Books. She connects Niger Congo languages. Okay. With Ireland. All right. That's cool. All right. I'm going to get that book. Appreciate it, brother. And if anybody else is interested in seeing if there's a connection between the Niger Congo languages and Ireland, here's the source, Eden on the Niger or Eden on the Niger. I already have a little knowledge on this book. She's basically showing how. I'm gonna just let you all read it. I don't want to butcher it or misquote her. The brother says true is up to interpretation, but we interpret data as well. We should stand is the best theory that is supported by the data. They were not afflicted for 400 years during that time. All right. So yeah, I mean, again, if you wanna believe that the 400 years happened in Egypt, you can. If you want to believe that the 400 years happened in America, you can. But again, I don't like to give my interpretations on prophecy. I just don't see how that prophecy from 3,000 years ago would apply to, our captivity in America. I just don't. That doesn't mean we're not Israelites. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't really take away from our heritage. I just don't see a 3,000-year-old prophecy dealing with us in America, especially when slavery started in the 1400s, not 1619. Yes. 2/3 already happened. If you would like to watch that video, please go watch it. And I'm getting to the last of the comments. If anybody has any other comments, questions, or anything, please drop it. And the sister wants to know, well, when would I be live again? I will be live again tonight or later on. Whenever I get off this live, I'm gonna figure out what time the brothers want to go live. But I'll be going live again on this other channel called World Without End. Specifically, we'll be getting into Israelite tribes, their oral traditions and history, and things like that later on tonight. And even tomorrow, I will be live again on another brother channel, Lion of Israel, for his Synthetic Sunday. So I may live stream the video from World Without End onto this channel, but if not, more than likely I'll be back live on this channel, my specific channel, sometime during this week or next Shabbat. And this is the correct name for you all that was interested in the book. It's actually Eden in Summer on the Niger. And she shows a lot of these, I guess you can say, Near Eastern, Mesopotamian like influences and cultural traits on the Niger River, specifically West Africa. America is the new Egypt. You can look on your dollar bill. Yes. I agree with that. I agree with all that, brother. I agree with all that. He says Congress acknowledged the 400 years, but I digress. Yes. I agree with that. And I can't, deny anything you're saying. But I just, I just know that slavery didn't start in 1619. It started way before that. And yes, they did give acknowledgement to us being enslaved for 400 years. But again, there were slaves over here from Africa and from Spain and Portugal before 1619. So, again, it's just everybody's interpretation. I don't have a problem with anybody believing the 400-year prophecy regarding or being in regards to America. Yeah, so yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. You can definitely see a lot of Egyptian influence all throughout America, from its systems to its architecture. It's a lot. She says my maternal is L3E1E. With this is the, or basically what he's asking is this the female version of E1B1A? More than likely, I would say yes, it is. It seems like during the Bantu expansion, it followed haplogroup E1A or E1B1A into Africa, or it migrated with it. And it's not even just associated with E1B1A. It's associated with haplogroup E period. So it's a whole study talking about how haplogroup or maternal haplogroup L3 is from Eurasia and how they back migrated to Africa and how they, migrated back into Africa with haplogroup E. You know what I'm saying? So that would be E1B1B and E1B1A. So yes, L3, I would say L3 and even L2 as well are the compatriots or the partners of E1B1A, E1B1B, or E period. You do find L3 or L in Syria. You do find it in Israel, I believe, in fairly recent times. And you do have it amongst quote unquote Jewish populations today. So yeah. Yes, slavery was definitely going on before the 1500s or around the 1500s. It was definitely going on. If you're talking about specifically Israelites, yes, we were enslaved before 1619. So, just take it or leave it. Take the information to leave it. Yes, the brother says Mashiach will come to bring us back. All right, sorry about that, family. I was having trouble with my mic, but again, the brother says Mashiach will come to bring us back. We do not know when. All right. Yes, I do agree with that to some degree. We do not know when. All we can do is pray. So my mic keeps going out for some reason, which is very interesting. So before it goes all the way out, if you have any final questions, comments, please go ahead and drop it. If not, please come and see me and my brothers over on World Without End later on. Says Harriet Tubman was an Israelite. She was a descendant of the Ashanti tribe. Yes. I saw that video of her family speaking on how they knew they were Israelites and things like that, how they descend from the Khan, so forth, so on. Yes. Harriet Tubman was indeed of the Israelite stock. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, family. So I'm really having problems with my mic all of a sudden for some reason. So I don't see any more questions, comments, or anything. So I'm gonna just say Shabbat Shalom to all you. Thank you for tuning in, and again, I'll see you all later. For those who will be tuning in to Word Without End, and I'll see you all tomorrow who will be tuning in to the Brother Lions Farm channel. Shabbat Shalom and enjoy your day.